Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey Seattle Kraken podcast. RJ, we're getting into mid-July. Usually this is when things start cooling off, but this week we got a pretty good episode coming up, I think.
Yeah, I think a pretty solid slate. We were concerned because we decided to maybe push back the mailbag a week, which we did end up deciding to do. We're like, are we going to have enough this week? It was a risk. We took it, but I think it paid off.
I think it paid off. That being said, mailbag next week, everybody.
For
So
sure.
yeah, so leave comments if you're watching this on YouTube with questions for next week. Obviously reach out to us on the socials. You can DM us. RJ will probably post something on X and Instagram that you can leave a comment on. Emerald City HKY if you don't already know that, and follow us there.
Yep. Yeah. If you want to email us, contact at
Yeah,
emeraldcityhockey.com. We got that too. Lots of ways to reach out to us. But send us in your questions. You guys always do such a great job with these mailbags. And I think they're one of our favorite things to do, Dylan. So looking forward to that next week. Just, send us all your questions, Kraken or otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we've got a lot of interesting things to talk about. We've got some Jared McCann rumors that we'll discuss. We have some hirings over on the player development side of things for the Kraken. Of course, after last week's breaking news that Jeff Tambellini is unfortunately leaving the Seattle Kraken to go for pretty sweet gig with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So again, congrats to him. And then the big thing to talk about this week was that article from it was Dom Decision, right?
Yes.
Over at
Correct.
The Athletic about contracts and how teams can maybe get some bargains out there on the open market or overpay. And the Kraken are on one of those extremes.
For sure. I mean, the article was about no state tax, the state tax advantage, and the
Yeah.
big talking point with the Florida Panthers. So it's really kind of Panther centric. But oh boy, did the Kraken show up on the flip side of things, on the opposite end of the spectrum. So we'll dive into that and maybe why that is.
Yep, definitely. Now, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, and probably if you're listening to it as well, because this room is a little echoey, I am in a hotel room in Santa Cruz. I've been on in the middle of a 5-day road trip with Julia and Afra going down the coast. We're stopping at just about every beach that allows dogs. So Afra's totally crashed out on the bed behind because she has been doing nothing but running at beaches for the last 3 days now. But RJ, obviously, road trip time, spending time on the road, you can't help but think of our wonderful sponsor, the law offices of Rico Tessendor, personal injury attorney. Now, normally I can do the normal spiel of like road trip. Oh, I'm on the road. Got to think of Rico, all that kind of stuff. What I'm going to say is I'm going to use this time where we talk about how great Rico is, but I'm going to take this opportunity to talk to Rico. Okay, that's how that's how we're using this sponsorship moment here. Rico, we've been driving down the coast, not the 5. Normally, just 2-day drive, 5. Focus on the destination, not the journey. That's usually my style. We're doing this trip down the 5, doing this trip down the coast. Lots of time on the 101 through Washington. There's no billboards for personal injury attorneys. Still a decent amount of people on the road, at least this time of year, Rico. Okay, so I'm just saying, if you want to corner the market out there on the 101, out on the coastal parts of Washington, you could if you decide to branch out of the greater Seattle area where you help thousands of people win millions of dollars as your clients, right?
I think that's some really good advice for Rico there. And hey, we know he's already made a great choice as far as decision to sponsor. But if you got that more sponsorship money, hey, those billboards are there, and you can help support the billboard industry, I guess, the way that you're supporting us. So thank you very much, Rico.
2 people on our softball team do actually work for a billboard company, so I could even hook you up, Rico, with some people who could help make this happen.
Loving the synergy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out if that does happen. People, let me know what should I use as like a little connection finder's fee in there. Uh, but while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. All right, RJ, Jared McCann rumors are basically everywhere. Everybody who covers the NHL, it feels like at this point, has floated some form of a Jared McCann trade. We got to talk about it at this point because does this mean that the Kraken are kind of behind the scenes shopping Jared McCann?
We were trying to not ignore this, but we didn't want to address it for as long as we possibly could because I think there's a lot of skepticism really from the both of us as far as the Kraken actually pulling the trigger and moving Jared McCann. He's been in rumors for off and on the last couple years, but it was always other teams calling about him because, well, why wouldn't you? I think if you're a competitive team, you should be calling Seattle about Jared McCann. But it does feel like it's heated up a little bit more over the last month or two. Just every insider has mentioned his name at least. So I think it is worth talking about. And so, yeah, Jared McCann may be on the market. And the reason I'm inclined to believe it a little bit more this time is just because I think it would make a lot of sense for the Kraken given the position they're in. Look, I want to start this off by saying I like Jared McCann as a player. I think he's a great player. Love the competitiveness. Love the scoring touch. He's the Kraken's best forward and has been every year of their existence. So
Definitely.
let's get that out of the way because I know there's a lot of fans that aren't going to want to hear, oh, it might make sense to trade him away. But I think given the decision the Kraken seem to have made, we've talked about it a lot the last month or so, right? About kind of choosing that transition year, it might make sense to move Jared McCann, who, by the way, has 2 years left on his deal at $5 million per season. It's a steal on that contract, but after that will be an unrestricted free agent. It might make sense to move him now, given what you feel your timeline realistically is.
Right. If these rumors are coming from something, right? If the Kraken are in fact talking to other teams about Jared McCann, or obviously if it's just they're fielding calls on him, then they should be doing that. Like every team should be open to hearing about everybody all the time. But if they are potentially out there shopping him, I do think like this signals that a lot of the talk of what we've heard from Jason Botterill since he's taken over as general manager of focusing on the young core of the team, the Matty Beniers, the Shane Wrights, looking ahead, Berkeley Catton, Jake O'Brien, those kinds of guys. This would make more sense there, right? Just because you'd be able to potentially get back younger assets, you could get back prospects. You maybe want picks. I think you probably would prefer prospects at this point, just because you would like to turn a corner at some point. And um, they would just fit your timeline a lot better than Jared McCann, because if this upcoming season is a retooling year, kind of seems like it is. They're gonna hope that they can be competitive and maybe be in the wild card chase, but really it feels like a retooling year. That's one of those 2 years burned off of his contract. Then you've only got 1 year left with Jared McCann at the good, reasonable bargain bin price that I still don't know why he signed that deal with the Kraken originally. But like it just doesn't start working for you timeline wise to have him there. And so I do think that this makes sense. They should don't just move him to move him, obviously. Like
Yes.
you should definitely make sure that you're getting an adequate return for him. But if at some point over this summer or sometime during next season, that opportunity is there. I think based on everything the Kraken have been saying and doing, it makes sense for them to go ahead and make that move.
Right. And so I think we're in agreement that it would make sense given the timeline. And so this is when you start looking, right? When you have 2 years left, because you're not in a rush to do anything. Like you said, you don't want to move
Mhm.
him just for the sake of moving him. And you have the time left on that contract that gives you plenty of leverage where you don't have to make a move unless a really good deal comes to you. But yeah, I think timeline wise, and also it's worth pointing out his age. He's 29 right now,
Yep.
not too old. But if you do this again with 1 year left on his contract in a year's time, he'll be 30, and any acquiring team who might want to keep him long term, you're just signing the player for what should ideally, I mean, realistically, sorry, be post prime years. So let's look though at if the Kraken were to move him, what
Mhm.
would make sense as far as a trade? What would actually move the needle that would get you to pull the trigger if you are Jason Botterill?
I mean, again, obviously, like traditionally, you're thinking first round pick, something built around that. I would try to look at teams that are looking to take that next step, right? They want to, maybe they're a borderline playoff team, they want to definitely become a playoff team, or they're a team that has been a playoff team but they want to try to become a contender, and adding a, 40 goal scorer, or certainly somebody who's going to be a 30 plus goal scorer on that very reasonable contract can really help them do that, right? He can be a great depth scoring ad, somebody who can play in your top six and is at such a reasonable price, especially with the cap going up this offseason. I think if I'm the Kraken, I'm looking at those teams that want to become, that want to take that next step, whether it's become a playoff team or become a contender, and I immediately ask for their best prospect. I immediately go and I say that's the person we want, because here's the bottom line. Those teams have their own timelines. Their timelines are they need to be getting better right now. Odds are their top prospect probably isn't a part of that, or maybe it is, but then you go for the next guy up. He doesn't work for their timeline. Jared McCann does. Jared McCann doesn't work for your timeline, but that prospect is going to. But I think that that's probably what the Kraken should be doing, is looking for an organization that has a top-rated prospect. And even if it's just like one for one, if the prospect is highly rated enough, I'd be okay with that. But I think that you need to be starting to target prospects now instead of just picks. I think the time for picks was kind of last year. You have the multiple first rounders already because of the deal with Tampa from Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gord. We've heard all along they want to move those. They want to move those for assets that can actually help them or be really part of what they want to build here. So I think we're talking about some sort of prospect return, somebody who's maybe a year away from the NHL, or could step into an NHL lineup right now, but is really going to need that 1 year runway to get up to speed. I think that's probably who the Kraken should be targeting.
Yeah, and by the way, they haven't been able to move those surplus Tampa picks, even though I'm sure they
Yeah.
would have wanted to try and get some immediate help, just given the market conditions.
Well,
They're not worth as much as they used to.
right, and that's the thing that kind of makes sense with this right now, and hearing about these Jared McCann rumors now instead of earlier in the offseason. I think that the Kraken did try to maybe be better this year, right? We know they kicked the tires on Jordan Kyrou, but they decided it wasn't worth giving up the eighth overall pick. I agree with that, just because realistically, how much did he fit your timeline? We don't know. We haven't necessarily heard that they've been involved in anything with Jason Robertson, but it wouldn't surprise me if Botchell's kicked the tires there as
You
well.
should.
Yeah, he should. He feels like he has been doing his due diligence around the league, and it's just been an off season where that stuff has just not really materialized for anybody, right? Like Cairo is still a St. Louis Blue, Robertson is still a Dallas Star. Like these kinds of bigger deals just aren't really developing this offseason. It was a weak free agency class. Like just a lot of this stuff has just not really worked the way it normally would in an offseason. And I think what it meant was the Kraken were not going to be able to immediately go out there and either sign somebody or make a trade for somebody who can definitely make their team better for next season. And that's why they're looking at things of like, okay, retool year, right? Like this is what we've been talking about the last like three podcasts. If you're staring down the barrel of a retool year, and we've talked about this as well, certainly over on Red Glare, it's a year where there's so many teams that are trying to take a next step. So many GMs have their jobs on the line this upcoming season, and nobody's selling. If you're the Kraken, you have to be looking at this and going like, Jared McCann doesn't totally fit our timeline. We're not able to really add anybody to make us competitive this year. So then how valuable is he to us for this upcoming season? Nobody's really selling. We could probably get a nice return on a guy like this. Maybe we need to start exploring this. Like it would not surprise me if that's the discussions that's been happening at HQ for the last 2 weeks.
Right. It's a massive opportunity, and one that you probably didn't see coming a few months ago when you look into the offseason and you're thinking, okay, aggressive, we're going to get better. But the market conditions inform a lot of this stuff. And, if you're the Kraken, look, I just think with the moves you've already made, if this is just what you're going to do, you've essentially written off next season. Like, let's be realistic about it here. I was actually just because it was on an athletic article that I was looking at, like their staff predictions and whatnot, but they had the Vegas betting odds for like making the playoffs next season. And if you look at it from MGM, Kraken have the third worst odds in the NHL to make the playoffs next year, ahead of only, I think, San Jose and Chicago. Like they could always surprise. Like I think they were one
Yeah.
athletic writers picked to be a surprise playoff team. But realistically, that's kind of your baseline point where you're at. And so it would make sense then to maybe move a Jared McCann. As far as specific players, though, are there any names that stand out to you? I was looking at trying to figure out teams that might want to take that next step. I mean, my ideal trade partner, I don't know if they'd be willing to kind of sell out for a McCann because I don't think they're ready to be a contender yet. But I think their GM might be desperate enough to try and take that next step, and that's Detroit and Steve
Yeah.
Yzerman, who probably shouldn't still be in that job, but might have a year or two left of runway that he's earned. But I look at the prospects that they have. And there are so many guys that I would love to trade for. If they're interested in Jared McCann, I think number one, I don't know if they'd even like, again, it's hard for me to know the value on these guys, but like Marco Casper would be incredible.
Yeah.
That might be too much.
I think
Um,
because he's already kind of NHL ready. They're
yeah, he put up
expecting him to
19
take
goals
the
last
next step.
season.
Yeah.
Probably not. Nate Danielson's more iffy. I don't know what you think about the player there, but you know, the thing is, does he have the scoring touch? He's a 200-foot like
I
center.
was
Like
gonna
you
say
need
he's
more of
another
that.
200-foot center. He's exactly what you already have too much of. So like it doesn't make a ton of sense. He's a great character guy, great compete guy, great complete game. But like, is he gonna light the lamp 30 times? No, he's probably not. So I don't know that Nate Danielson makes a ton of sense. Obviously, I'd love Carter Bear, and that
Is
would
he too
make a lot of
young?
sense. But he might be too young because he just got drafted. He's gonna have the rehab with the injury and everything as well. And also, we don't generally see guys who were just picked in the first round traded all that often. That's just not something that you see. Like for a team to onboard somebody, go through dev camp, and then like 2, 3, even a month later trade him, that it's pretty unheard of.
Yeah, and they don't really need like they have like Sandy and Pelika, and I mean Edvinson's already arrived. He's too good now
Edmonton's
to
already
trade
arrived.
for.
Pelika would be awesome. I would love that. Because then, okay, big brain here. You bring in Pelika.
Make another move.
He's your Vince Dunn replacement. Now all of a sudden you can start looking at doing the same thing with Vince Dunn, who also I think only has 2 years left on his
Hmm.
contract.
Yeah, and so those are the kind of moves I'd like to see. If Bottrell's going to be a wheeler and dealer, and the value is out there to be had for players who can help teams right now, these are the kind of moves you should be looking into. Again, you need to make sure to get good value on it, of course, but like this is the kind of stuff I would love to see the Kraken at least looking into.
Yeah, I mean that's the crazy thing is like, you ask like what teams, there's so many teams. Like there's just legit so many teams that are trying to take that next step, whether it's to become a playoff team and save your GM's job, or to get over the hump and get to a conference final appearance or a Stanley Cup final appearance and save your GM's job on that side of things. I mean, I got to think, Carolina would be interested just because why wouldn't they be? They're trying to add as much as they possibly can. They've got cap space for days. I don't know totally like prospect wise who would make a lot of sense there. It's a pretty thin group
They
prospect
don't
wise
really
for
have the blue
Carolina.
chip kind of prospect
Yeah.
that I would be looking for. That's the issue. They've got a lot of really good prospects, but no like top tier ones. I mean, maybe he's not as much of a blue chip prospect as you'd be looking for. What about LA and Liam Greentree?
I would love Liam Greentree. I mean, that's talk about big body winger, who's just going to go out there and just demolish people. He will make space in the front in the front of the net. He'll make space for whatever center you have out there. Him with like a Berkeley Catton, and it would be fantastic because he would just take so much off Berkeley Catton's plate if Berkeley Catton was playing at center. I think that would be great. He has scoring touch. He can play with very skilled players. Like that would be a great add. The problem is like he nearly made the Kings roster last year as an 18-year-old. Like he was like their last cut in camp. They're probably thinking he could probably go this year. So that being said, I'm sure they would much prefer Jared McCann for this upcoming season than Liam Greentree. But yeah, there's a lot of teams like that. I mean, there's just so many that could potentially be on board with this. We could probably spend a whole hour
Just brainstorming.
manufacturing
Yeah.
things for it.
Yeah. But it just presents a lot of exciting possibilities. And so as you look around the league, and I mean, if you're listening to this, you can, kind of go yourself and see some of the top teams in the league. You can even just Google team name draft history and look at some of their top picks over the last 3 or 4 years and some of their top prospects that they have. And you can get excited about a lot of these guys. And so, yeah, I think realistically, the Kraken, look, I still think it's less likely that they move him really. Like, I think
Yeah.
they're looking into it, but I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for a move. And I think they're not going to do this unless they're getting not a pick, but a player back that fans can get excited about. Because they're going to need, like, just for the narrative as well, too. Like, if you're going to be, this is going to look like you're a seller, you got to bring in somebody who can at least theoretically contribute for the Seattle Kraken in the next 2 years, something significant.
This being a trade deadline deal, I could definitely see happening, right? Kraken are in the basement again. I think that's when you got to start preparing yourself if you're a huge Jared McCann fan that could happen.
Yeah, the deadline might make the most sense because I think they want to at least get one more run out of this team they have and hope for a miracle
Yeah,
that
I
maybe
mean,
they could be in the playoff race.
we've talked about it, right? Anywhere between 5 to 15% chance maybe that they could be a playoff team this year. Go ahead and roll those. Again, you're not in a rush with Jared McCann or potentially Vince Dunn, right? Like you can wait until the deadline. It's probably not going to change too much for you, other than you miss the opportunity to be like the one team selling something that somebody wants right now, which is not really happening.
Yeah. And in
Given
that case, if
Pittsburgh
you want
hasn't
to take
moved the
advantage
rush
of this
for Raquel.
market, yeah, then set your price high. And if someone meets it, then do it.
Yeah, exactly. But I trust Jason Bottrell. I think that that's something that they could potentially do.
Yeah, so something to keep an eye on there with his name in the rumor mill. But to some actual concrete news and things that's actually happened, not just speculation around a trade. The Kraken did replace Jeff Tambellini, who we talked about leaving last week, and they have elevated Corey Murphy to be their director of player development, which was Jeff Tambellini's former role. And then also they have promoted, I guess, Justin Ride basically to a new role, which is head of player strategy for the Kraken. So this is a very interesting development, especially reading the article about this by Bob Condor. And by the way, great stuff from Bob Condor as always.
As
But
always, yeah.
a lot of interesting details in this article.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. So we'll start with Corey Murphy taking over for Jeff Tambellini, head of player development. Um, a pretty hands-on kind of guy when it comes to player development. It sounds like he might be that way in this role as well, not just prior when the last 2 seasons when he's been more of a consultant for the team. It sounds like is as head of player development could also be pretty hands-on here. If you want to know what he's done, he works with defensemen primarily, and I think the two biggest things, and Bob highlights it in the article, but I would have highlighted this, even if it wasn't in there. Work with Ty Nelson, and if you've followed any of my prospect chats when we watched the Coachella Valley games this past year, stuff like that, Ty Nelson has been incredible at the AHL level. He has made the transition from the CHL playing with North Bay over in the OHL to the Firebirds, and he has just been so excellent down there at the AHL level. Was able to climb up the depth chart there. There was many nights where it just looked like he was the best defenseman on that roster. His puck moving, his ability to help the team attack and transition, his ability to defend transitions, just all of it from Ty Nelson has been absolutely incredible. His development, especially being a third round pick, somebody who also had he's vertically challenged, something you and I might know something about, right? And at a position where that's a huge thing to have to overcome. And Murphy has really helped him do that and blossom into somebody well ahead of any timeline or really expectations that most third round defensemen would have. So I think that that's a huge win. The other big W for what Murphy's done working with the defensemen and really the defensive prospects for the Kraken is Tyson Jugnow, who took a huge step forward this past season, led defenseman in the WHL in points, was a huge reason why Portland was able to push Spokane in the Western. Well, they weren't totally able to push them in the Western Conference Finals, but big reason why Portland was there at all was because of what Jugnow was able to do. Yes, he might play a little bit too much hero ball out there on the ice, but his skills and his development is something to definitely take note of. And I recently, when I was ranking Kraken prospects positionally, I had him second in the organization behind Blake Fiddler. he's just come along in a huge way, and everything that he's been able to do has been really impressive. And I'm really hoping to see him in Coachella Valley this next season and see what he can do there. But those are huge developments for two guys that, look, traditionally aren't supposed to make it and aren't supposed to be even talked about as much as we talk about them this far into their dev cycle. And so seeing what Corey Murphy has been able to do with those guys gives me a lot of hope for what he'll be able to do, kind of overseeing everybody here now with the Kraken.
Yeah, it's a good track record. I mean, for Tyson Jugnaut, like a fourth round pick. Most often after a couple years, we are not talking about a fourth round pick being someone who, might play some NHL games. I mean,
Mhm.
in that fourth round, I think there's only two guys who've played NHL games at this point, and one of them was like an overage goalie, Hildeby in Toronto. So, it's impressive to even be talked about in that terms right now. And so, I think, look, I think we were both expecting internal hire probably,
Yeah.
to fill Tambellini's shoes, and I think as these are such crucial development years for all the Kraken prospects that they have. I mean, you asked Tambellini about it too, with so many of them graduating to the AHL, but also just that next crop coming in. We're finally starting to see a lot of the guys that they've drafted recently, come into their own and kind of reach that crucial part in their development. You want somebody who's had that familiarity with some of those guys already. It's a big process to have somebody from outside the organization for that top role learn everything all over again.
Right, and it's going to be a big process defensively, right? Like I do also wonder if part of the reason they make this hire and they promote this individual within the organization is because they look at their prospect pool and they go, "Wow, we've got forwards for days." Right? We've got Berkeley Catton who looks potentially ready to go. We've got Yanni Newman who definitely seems ready to go. We've got Jake O'Brien who looks like he could have the most potential of any of the centers we've drafted. And then that's not even counting Chalet, Rykov, Fergus, all these other guys that you have at the forward position. Then you look at the defense and, things are a lot more dicey, right? There's not the huge names in the prospect community there. There's a lot of guys that are maybe later round picks. They have something that you could easily see keeping them from becoming an NHL defenseman. But because he has a good track record of working with these guys, you could say, okay, hey, let's keep this guy, let's promote him, let's make sure he stays with our organization, and let's go ahead and have the focus shift maybe from developing forwards over into developing defensemen, and let's really try to bolster that part of our prospect pool because yeah, it hasn't made sense to take them at the top of drafts. Let's make sure that all these depth guys that we've been drafting, have a chance to make it.
Yeah, and you're going to need him looking at how it shakes out with the blue line going forward, where you have some aging defensemen that are going to need replacing in probably a year or two. So it's going to be very important for you there. So anything else on Murphy before we get to Justin Rye?
No, just I would love to talk to him and kind of hear what his plans are for things. But so Murphy, if you're listening, if you could like leave something in the mailbag, right? Like that would be cool. Just
Yeah. Just any questions you might have, or anything you just want to say.
sure,
We will
yeah,
even accept a comment if it's from you
yeah,
there. Just
yeah. Come on, Corey,
we'll read
just do
it
it. It's all
verbatim.
good.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're listening, reach out. But then the other hire and the other announcement here, and I thought this was very interesting from
This is
a
yeah.
Kraken perspective right away, is Justin Rye promoted to a brand new role as head of player strategy. So this role did not exist before. And I think that in itself just opens up a lot of interesting questions.
It really does. So
I'll let you have the floor,
I
Dylan.
was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, I was gonna say, you're gonna have your rant later when it comes to contracts and stuff. This is my opportunity here. Um, so head of player strategy is just like an interesting idea. Like it could mean lots of different things, but it's just an interesting title to have. I'm just gonna read kind of what he talked about. So the quotes from the Bob Condor article, and then I'll kind of go from there. But Rice said, "My job is to be able to research the league, research our players, and figure out the existing trends. Most specifically, it's my role to be additive to Coach Lane's staff, making sure players can better execute his structure at a higher level, staying on the same message as the coaching staff." Um, he then goes on to say, as far as like how he kind of got into player development and everything, Over 4 to 5 years, I picked the top 25 guys in the world, which is subjective, but all players I like to watch and who would lead the league in points. I would clip them every single night of the season to figure out commonalities. Was it a read they made off the rush? Was it the way they moved? Was it a deke they did? Was it a read they made off the rushes there again? Was it an ozone off puck movement that they made? And I started realizing that these reads that these top end players are doing, they're all within the coaching system, but they're finding ways to get themselves open. I looked for and identified any commonalities among the players and turned it into a video program. And then that's how he was able to kind of break into the NHL there. And I it's interesting to like hear that, because I think that that's something that like I've talked about a lot, right? Like that's what separates the good players from the great players, is their ability to work within their system, because every player's got to play within the system, but just be creative out there, right? To see the things that everybody else isn't seeing, because if all forwards were seeing it, guess what? Defensemen are seeing it. You got to find those open spots. You've got to go out there and make that stuff happen. And that's something that the Kraken have struggled with, I think is fair to say. We haven't seen a lot of guys go out there and really be creative and to do that kind of stuff. And so I think that that's something that is going to be good for this group, is to have somebody who's doing that. Um and yeah, it's okay. The last thing, last quote here. As for what he'll be working with players, their reads and high volume plays that you're making, your off puck movement, how that's affecting your overall play and the overall team's play. Like this is all good stuff to hear when they talk about what kind of this role is going to be for Ryan, and the fact that it is additive to Lane's staff, and he'll kind of be working with him and everything, and being a part of that. It sounds like, RJ, what a video coach is, right? Like this sounds a
Yeah.
lot like watching film with players and then working with them on that stuff. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. It's part of a video coach's role, and really a part that we haven't heard a whole lot about when it comes to the two video coaches we know the Kraken have in Tim Ohashi, um, excuse me, and Brady Morgan.
Brady Morgan. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I had the name just
Yeah.
Tim Ohashi and Brady Morgan, right? Whenever we hear about them, it seems like it's in the context of their game day duties, right? Where they're finding an offside or finding something that helps take a goal off the board, and or add a goal for the Kraken, whatever. And they're very good at that. We've seen the successes that they've had with that and swinging key moments in games. But the other part of a video coach's role is to go over video with the coach, with the players, and do a lot of this stuff that it sounds like Justin Rye is now going to be doing. And so it does kind of beg the question, okay, how much was it part of their role before? And is this something the team was really even doing to the extent that really, as an NHL team, you absolutely need to do? Like, you look at what Justin Rye's job description is and the quotes that you just read, those are essential things. That is essential as an NHL team if you want any chance of winning on a consistent basis. And so it does leave a lot of questions about that. And to be fair, like, we probably as media didn't do the best job asking about that stuff.
Yeah.
We knew it was, the end result was bad, and we probably should have probed a little bit more, the more that we thought about it now in hindsight, right? Because
Yeah.
of course we'd ask questions about like the video staff reviewing a play on a given game and all that stuff. That was covered pretty well, but we didn't do a whole lot of digging. Who knows if the various coaches, or I guess Hackstall or Bosma, how much they would have really told us about what exactly the video staff does in terms of their other role. But yeah, it leaves me a lot more questions than answers.
Right, and it's not always just a video coach either. Like this is something that assistant coaches will do. They'll go over things with players, right? Special teams coaches are watching tape with the players, back there in the rooms, and then going out and working on things on the ice. Like this is something that assistant coaches could be a part of as well. So don't want to just dump all the blame on the video group for the Kraken. But the bottom line is, this is something that 2 years ago I started calling out the team for, because we were seeing in that last year of Dave Haxall, year 3 for the Kraken, especially on defense, we saw so many plays where I'm like, why are we seeing the same thing happen game by game? Why are we seeing the same guy struggle with the same read over and over and over? It's obvious. I'm watching it happen. This is happening play after play. Pucks are ending up in the back of the net. Why is nobody working with them on tape? Like this is a tape fix. This is something that watching film fixes, and going over studying that and then communicating with the player and having the player go out there and fix it. Again, we've talked about it in the past just because we have gone through two coaching staffs at this point, and it has been a problem, right? It was a problem last year as well. I was talking about the same thing again, and sometimes this extends to the offense as well, where it's just like, why are you guys doing the same thing over and over? Like watch the film. Like it's this is something that could be fixed, and most teams would fix it. Within a couple games of seeing it happen, it gets fixed. But it was just never the case with the Kraken. And the fact that we've seen it now over, two coaching staffs led us to think, well, maybe it's just an issue with the player group, right? Like maybe for whatever reason, this is just not a player group that it takes messaging that way and is able to then, however people are communicating to them, they're just not able to internalize it and then apply it out there on the ice, doing their job. But the fact that they're creating this role and that this role seems so focused on doing exactly this tells me that the Kraken internally have recognized that it has been something that they have not done well enough, right? And this is probably not just a last year thing. This is probably going back to Hackstall because, like I said, this was definitely an issue under Hackstall as well. And so I'm happy because this is something that I've been talking about for years now that the Kraken need to be doing. It's something that you should have been doing all along, whether you needed to bring in an extra person and create this role or not. Somebody needed to be there to watch this tape, pick up on these tendencies, approach the player with these tendencies, and then communicate and work with that player on how to fix them. Like that is an integral job, right? Because every other team is out there and they are doing pro scouts and they're watching you ahead of their upcoming game against you, and they're noticing these tendencies. And when you have, especially defensively, uh, you've shown that you make it a habit of falling for the same thing over and over. Guess what teams are going to do? They are going to go out there and they're going to exploit that. You need to make sure you're not doing that. If you're a forward, if you're Matty Beniers shooting at the same spot on the net all the time and nothing's happening, you need somebody to be like, bro, look at this. I compiled a 10-minute video of every shot last year, and like 85% of them were to the same spot. Let's work on that, right? Like you need somebody who can do that with you. And so I'm very happy that Justin Rye is going to do that for the Kraken. I am just very confused as to why it was not happening before. I'm glad it's happening now, but like this makes me feel very vindicated for something that felt like I was maybe just screaming into the void, or I was maybe just making a read. Maybe my expectations are totally off. Maybe what I'm thinking is just not true. But this has made me feel very vindicated for a lot of the criticism that I've heaped at both of the past two coaching staffs and at the player group. And again, maybe it's not so much on the player group now that they're adding somebody for this, but it is ridiculous to me that seemingly nobody was doing this beforehand. I just don't know how you put so many resources into everything that the Kraken put resources into, and you don't have somebody watching tape, going over film with the players, and making sure that these basics, and then from the basics, the more advanced stuff actually happens.
Well, I think on your comment about the player group too, we're gonna find out a lot this
Yeah.
season, right? Because
Yeah,
I
no
still
excuse
think
now.
yeah, exactly. No excuse now, because I still think there's actually a chance that it was the player group.
Yeah.
Because remember, Dylan, last season, I've mentioned this many times before, but we would hear at the morning skate from players be like, "Oh, what do you need to do to beat this specific opponent?" Right? And well, we get Dan first. Dan would be like, "Yeah, this is what we have to. We have to like clean breakouts out of our own zone, right? Clean breakouts. We got to neutralize their forecheck. Clean breakout passes." We'd ask the players, "Oh, what do you think you need to do to to win the game tonight?" Well, clean breakout passes. We've been working on that. Dan mentioned that. We got to have clean breakout passes. Neutralize their forecheck, right? Everyone's on the same page. The message has been delivered. I mean, just knowing the team they're playing against, like, yeah, that makes sense. That's intuitive,
Mhm.
right? They have us heavy forecheck. You want to
Yeah.
neutralize that. Clean breakout passes, right? And that night at the game, they would have some of the worst breakout passes, the sloppiest looking breakouts we've ever seen at the NHL level. And you wonder, okay, like where's the breakdown? It has to be with the player group. The coaches are telling them, the players are listening, they're able to repeat it to us, and then they don't do it. And so I think there's still that possibility, but you
Yes.
know what? We're going to find out. And that in itself is a win. Like of all the, things, if you're not going to, necessarily make the playoffs, there are certain things you want to get out of a season and information you want to have. This is a big one. Like if you can't fix it now with Justin Ryan this role and you still have those kind of just mental lapses consistently, then you can confirm 1,000% it is that group of players. And you know what? Next year, a lot of them are not under contract, and you're going to have a ton of flexibility to make wholesale changes to the roster that you didn't have the flexibility to do this year. And you're going to go ahead and do it because, if that's the case, right? But on
Yeah.
the other hand, if this fixes a lot of things, then great. This actually could, make you potentially play meaningful hockey in March and April, like we're all hoping they do. And it might fix a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of development this kind of leads to and everything. But yeah, oh my gosh, it was so frustrating. It made last year uniquely frustrating that it was like, so you guys are aware of what you need to be doing better, and you're just not doing it. Right. As a coaching staff, you're just choosing not to really do it and make adjustments. And as player group, you're just choosing not to execute on any of it during a game. Like this is awesome. I love this. It was like
Exactly.
they were handed a script from the pro scout, right? Like the pro scout would watch the team that they're going to play and would write up, this is what you need to do to beat them. And then that was handed as a script to the coaching staff, and Dan would read it to us. And then he would pass that paper off to the player who was coming out to talk to us next. And then they would read that script off to us. But it was like nobody really like went in and like game planned for it and was like, hey, this team really struggles to defend breakouts that are bored and out. Let's focus on like going for the board here. Like there was no like next level to it. It was just like uh, breakouts.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Oh man, we could go like all of that. Remember all the post games last year? Dylan, all the post games. It was the same
Yes, I
thing.
do. It
So
was
anyway,
brutal.
let's not linger on that.
Yeah, let's
Um,
talk about something else. So,
yeah, something else.
come on, RJ, take us to more positive territory. Let's
Don't
talk about
you can't put
contract.
that on me right now. Yeah, as we're about to talk about this contract situation, kind of get into my area of ranting. Which, if you did join me for the Armchair GM stream last week, I did touch on that there and kind of did a deeper dive into all of this in this article from Dom Lucian. But I thought this was a great article. I would recommend going ahead and reading it. If you have a subscription to the Athletic, go check it out. It's titled "How Big is the No State Tax Advantage for the Florida Panthers?" So it's kind of going to the no state tax thing, but really the no state tax thing is, it's a minor advantage, but you kind of have to combine it with other things. Quick answer on that, but really where it stands out from a Kraken perspective is this chart that's in the article. And it is, so he calculated the average discount on contracts over the last 5 years. And so for a time frame, he did the last 5 years, basically since Seattle entered the league, because then you have 32 teams and Caesar just
Mhm.
gathered that data. Works great for us
Yeah, I
because
love that.
that's, yeah, exactly. So love that, the time frame. But so Dom Lucian basically took his model and projecting kind of how much, and he looked at just UFA players, so unrestricted free agent age players. So, takes away ELCs, takes away, younger guys where teams have more leverage where that can kind of skew things. But he looked at all of the UFA skater contracts signed with a cap hit of over $1 million, because the league minimum guys kind of also skew things as well. And he compared them to the expected value of each contract at the time of signing. So this isn't necessarily contracts aging well or aging poorly. This is at the time of signing based on his projections for the value of that player versus what the team actually paid. And so comparing that, he found, unsurprisingly, Florida Panthers at the top of the NHL with a $1 million average discount per contract. So this is per player signed, saving $1 million discount versus what the player is projected to do. So, of course, Florida, back to back cup champions. We're not surprised by this. But of course, all the way down on the other end of the list, at very last place, at a $1.3 million premium overpay average per contract, is the Seattle Kraken. So their overpay is actually greater than the Panthers underpay, and that kind of puts it in perspective there. But of course, then it's worth looking at and say, okay, well, why are the Kraken overpaying more than any other team in the NHL for their contracts. And so there are a lot of potential explanations. I guess the first question is just how damning is this? How big of a problem is this, right? And I think it's a pretty big problem. When you consistently overpay on deals, it becomes harder to operate in the salary cap league, where, especially as we saw last season, every dollar can make a difference. This is a consistent problem. I don't think it's an issue if you're maybe, in the bottom third. I think there are certain things that can explain that and understand it. But to be last place is a massive problem.
You don't want to be last place in anything, right? In a competitive environment like professional sports, you know where you don't want to be on just about anything? Last place. And the Kraken are definitively in last place, right? Like you are on the farthest edge of the bad extreme. That's never a place you want to be in life. You don't want to
Yeah,
be on the bad extreme and setting the bar for what that extreme is. And that's kind of where they were at. And yeah, I mean, this explains how, like last year, you were so tight against the cap that you could not field a full roster. You could not have a full roster because you were so close up against the cap, and you were a bottom six team in the league.
exactly. And you don't really see that very much elsewhere in the NHL. Teams that are cap teams generally are better than that. But I think it points to that issue. And I know there's been a lot of reaction, especially on the Kraken subreddit. I did take a look.
I told you
And
not to.
I know you told me not to. I couldn't help it. So I took a look, and there were a lot of people, I think, eager to, I guess, maybe find reasons why it would make sense that the Kraken would overpay on some of these contracts. Because look, you're not going to expect to be Florida, right? They've got a lot going for them. They're back to back cup champs. They've got the weather. They've got the no state income tax. The Kraken do have that as well. But okay, they're not necessarily the most competitive team in the league, but none of the issues by themselves, or really even in combination, explain why they're dead last, right? It's not that they're a bad team and that for 3 or 4 years have not been a playoff team. You look at San Jose and, they're in the bottom third, but they still overpay by half of what the Kraken do. And they've been a worse team consistently over the last 5 years than Seattle. You look at,
And
I
one
mean,
of the worst tax situations in the National Hockey League.
yes,
Like
it's
top
worst
five
tax
worst
situation.
tax situation.
Cost of living might be the worst. The
Yeah.
Bay Area is crazy expensive. So like they have that also not going for them, and they're not anywhere near the bottom. The weather is the other thing I've seen been brought up a lot. Vancouver gets a discount on their contracts. I mean, that is wild. Like, they're I think top 10 in the league as far as the discounts they get on their contracts. Vancouver and Seattle have a pretty much identical climate, pretty darn similar.
Yeah.
So that's out. And just looking along this list, like there are plenty of teams that have.
There's good teams. There's consistent playoff teams down there near where the Kraken are as far as
Yeah,
having to overspend. So it's not even just like good and bad. Like, because that was the number one reason I saw fans kind of give, not just on Reddit, but anywhere, for why the Kraken could be dead last was, well, we're a bad team. So you have to overpay to get people to want to join that organization. Washington's two spots ahead of you. LA's like 3 or 4 spots ahead of you. Like, no, that's not this.
no, it's definitely not. Like for every reason you can give, there's good counter examples, usually multiple of them. And so like it just doesn't explain why the Kraken would be last. And like I think, when you look at just as far as the reasoning and everything, because you also have teams that are like not that great that, still get discounts. Um, but I like this line from Dom Lucic. And again, he's talking about no state tax and that whole issue, right? And by the way, the Kraken do have that advantage. Like that's the ultimate counter example that he can point to.
We've never talked about it, but like it does exist, and we've never talked about it because they've never seemingly used it. It's
Right.
like
And
it's
it
a
is
card in their hand that is still in their hand 4 years later.
exactly. And so like they've had this, but you have to be able to take advantage of it. And so I'll just quote this from the article. While it's fair to say there is some advantage for teams in no tax states, it's not a given. It's one that needs to be extracted by a strong management group. That primarily comes from pricing. something any team is capable of doing at the level that Florida operates at. And I think Lucian really hits on it here. It's about pricing. It's about knowing what a player is worth and having that price structure and negotiating contracts based on that. And I think that's one element for the Kraken have done exceptionally poorly, right? Under Ron Francis, at least, although you've seen it like Bottrell hasn't done a whole lot yet as far as signing contracts that qualify for this. But, Ryan Lindgren, that was still an overpay
Mhm.
based on what he was projected to get. And so it still seems to be an issue at this point. And I think that's where the Kraken need to improve is just pricing in the value of players correctly. And it seems like something they haven't done well. I think it's a problem. Ron Francis did not seem to have a good sense of value. I wonder if it's also partly on Ricky Olczyk, who negotiates the Kraken's contracts. It could be
I
that
mean, it's
as
worth
well.
mentioning, right? Like
Yeah.
you
So,
have to when you're dead last, you have to look at
right.
everything.
And so, we don't know the details of the process, but that's something that could be an issue as well. But one of the things that Dom Lucian pointed out, and I thought this was especially informative, was looking at a way that teams have managed to leverage their no state tax advantage, and that Florida especially has managed to do this, and that is through signing bonuses. So, just quick overview on signing bonuses. I mean, there are three ways that an NHL player can be paid. There is base salary, and that is paid out basically on a per game basis throughout a season. So you kind of get your game check every game, and it's divided, your salary divided by 82 and all that. And that's paid throughout the season. Then there are performance bonuses, which are usually for like young players or older players. We'll kind of gloss over those right now. Performance bonuses, you can kind of guess what those are. They're based on things that you do in the games. But then there is signing bonuses. And signing bonuses are paid out in full on July 1st, the first day of the given league year. So basically paid up front. You're paid that before you're paid your salary for that year. And the big difference also is how they're taxed, because base salary is taxed based on where each individual game is played. So in the location, right? So you do have your 41 home games, but you also have the 41 road games. So you're taxed in each of those individual cities, and it kind of spreads things out and makes the differences less for a no state tax team. But signing bonuses are paid out and taxed just on the state where the team resides and the player resides. So that if you're in a no state tax state like Florida, you pay out a signing bonus. That is not subject to any state income tax. And so you can really leverage your advantage as a no state tax team. And oh boy, have the Florida Panthers done this. So 81% of the total amount owed on all their deals north of $5 million has been signing bonuses for the Panthers. And especially you look at the recent contracts they've just signed, loaded up on signing bonus.
Yeah, look at Barkov, Kachuk, Bennett, Verhage, Marchand. All of them have like a base salary of $1 million. Everything else in their contract is
Which is the
signing
least amount
bonus.
allowed.
Right, right. Like it is as low as possible. Everything else is signing bonus. So you look at these contracts. I don't have them up because I'm just using my laptop here on the road. But like, what is Barkov's AAV? Is he 10 million or 11? Something like
I
that.
believe he's 10 even.
Yeah, so he's getting like, we'll average it out. So it kind of bounces around year by year sometimes. $9 million in a signing bonus paid out July 1st that he doesn't have to pay state income tax on, and then only $1 million in game checks paid out over the 82 game season. Tax doesn't matter on that so much, right? Like you're getting 90% of your deal at the tax-free rate, and you're getting it all in one lump sum in the middle of the off season. Probably able to take a nice summer vacation, celebrate your Stanley Cup wins with that.
Yeah, I'd say so. That nice, big cash infusion on July 1st.
Yeah, it
And so
bounces
like,
around. It bounces around. Like this year, it was 10.6 million. It's been 11 the
Mhm.
last couple of years on Barkov's deal. Drops to 9 million, then 7, and then 6.2 for the last 2 years. That signing bonus. So, but the point is, it's a huge amount of money that you're getting in just signing bonuses.
Right. And so that can make it attractive for a player to sign somewhere, but also to take a bit of a discount in terms of AAV, because that is more real dollars going into your
Mhm.
pocket if it's largely based on signing bonus. Also, there's a time value to money too. You can invest that money instead of having to wait for the time you get it in a game check. And Tampa's taken advantage of this. 51% of their money doled out on these contracts is in signing bonuses. Vegas, 49%. They're certainly taking advantage of it. Now, of course, you may be asking or wondering, why don't teams just do this all the time? Why isn't it, 90% or for everybody? Why isn't everyone doing this? Well, for ownership, there is a bit of a drawback. With that time value of money, that's less money that you're getting, and that eats into your profits as an owner of a team. And so you need an owner who has those deep pockets and is willing to spend and not really worry as much about the profitability and all that sort of thing, right? You need ownership who's on board with spending money. And not a lot of NHL teams have that, to the fullest extent. Um, and so you need that. And then also you just need ownership that can like put the money in the account. Like you did the rough math, right? That on
Right.
July 1st, the Panthers, I think, needed to have about $70 million
Yeah, it was
ready to
I
go
think
for signing bonuses.
yeah, I think over 70 million. So the Panthers had to pay out 2 players over $70 million dollars on July 1st, which by the way for NHL teams is day 1 Q1 for your fiscal year. You're just putting out $70 million dollars. You're not going to see any revenue coming in until games start getting played. So like if you're an organization that's kind of operating like year to year and you're not like super cash flow positive, that's a difficult thing to be able to do. Obviously, Florida does not have that problem. Obviously, winning back-to-back cups, going to 3 straight finals appearances, all of that stuff, they've been able to bank a decent amount of money here. But like that is something that just realistically not a ton of organizations are going to be able to be in a spot in where yeah, they can afford to just drop 70, 80 million dollars on July 1st and then just not see any revenue come in for months.
Yeah, it's a tough position to be in. And so you really need solid ownership with a willingness to spend and deep pockets. But you know what? I think the Kraken have that. I think they've shown
Should.
time and again, spending, whether it's like on a very expensive AHL roster the first couple
Yeah.
seasons, or on their facilities or everything. Like they spare no expense on anything that they feel is going to help the team, give the team a chance to win. So then why are the Kraken, of these six no state tax teams, far and away last place here again? I'm sorry to bring up last place again. Only 9% of their contracts here with of signing bonuses. Only 9% to Florida's 81%. Second least is Nashville with 18%. And we know their ownership doesn't like to do a lot of signing bonuses. Like that's their philosophy. Like they really hold
Yeah.
a hard line on that sort of thing. And yet the Kraken have only utilized it half as much. And with ownership that I think would be on board with that sort of thing, it's kind of baffling, but it also raises the question of like, is this something that Ron Francis was even aware of? Like, I know it sounds like
Right.
that
Well,
sounds really
it
bad,
sounds really bad.
but I think
But
it's fair to ask the question, because when you look at the result here, like why aren't you taking advantage of this?
right. Like somebody has to answer for the fact that it has not been utilized, right? And whether it's an ownership doesn't want to spend the money on July 1st or it's management not being aware of it or just deciding or even worse than not being aware of it probably deciding not to. But you look at Ron Francis's history whether it's Carolina or here and there's just no signing bonuses on any contracts or very minimal year 1 signing bonus stuff, right? Where it's almost like, here's your relocation, money, right? So you can move your
Right.
family this off season. Like that's basically the level that Ron Francis operates. And obviously Carolina, again, an ownership group known throughout the league as one not necessarily wanting to drop a ton of cash ever, probably much less in the middle of July and a bunch of signing bonuses. So I'll give Ron Francis a pass for the Carolina stuff. But boy, this almost comes across as just like a guy whose philosophy is like, you've got to earn your money. Like game by game, you've got to earn your money or something. Like a player's not going to play hard if they don't have that incentive or something. Like it's crazy when we were looking at all of these Kraken contracts, all the contracts they've struggled with. Berkey, Grew, right? Contracts that have aged really poorly for them and they've really struggled with something like the Chandler Stevenson contract. You look at that one and there's a signing bonus year 1 of $4 million, signing bonus year 3 of $2 million, and that's it. That's all the signing bonus in the Chandler Stevenson contract. And I can't help but to think if Chandler Stevenson's base salary was $1 million, and then you gave him $4 million a year in signing bonuses, if an AAV of 5 million instead of 6.25, he makes about the same, if not more money on that deal. I
Right,
gotta
and
think
you
that you
can
maybe get that deal done, and then you just have Chandler Stevenson for $1.25 million less, which, by the way, is roughly what you tend to overpay guys.
yeah, that's true. Actually, that's about what the overpay is anyway on the
Like,
projections.
shocking.
And look, there is the downside of it potentially, where it makes it harder to buy out because signing
Yes.
bonus money is immune from buyouts. But you can just do that for a certain the first few years of a deal. It doesn't have to be signing bonus the whole way through. You can just take advantage of it until the point where you feel you might maybe need to buy out the player or there could be some kind of issue there. And I think the ultimate example of this, and you found it, you pointed out while we were doing the Red Glare podcast, and if I can rewind a little bit too, you talked about like you got to earn your money, right? From Francis, which again, it's like
I don't
silly,
it's very silly. Like, I don't
but
genuinely think that that's what
no,
it
I don't,
is,
I
but
don't, I don't
it
think that
has
either.
that, like, when you're looking for answers, like, you have to consider it.
Right. No, and I don't think so either, but it made me think of like, well, that could actually sound good. That could just be accountability, right? But you think about what team has the most accountability for their players. And if you don't play well, you are out. It's Vegas, right?
Uh-huh.
And they load their contracts up with signing bonus. I think outside of Florida, they do the best job of taking advantage of this sort of thing. And, with the Stevenson thing, like I look at the Shea Theodore contract and I love this because he's 29 years old right now and he just signed an extension, right? It's a
Mhm.
long-term extension. I think it's 7 years. And you know what? He's got massive signing bonuses, 8.5 million year one, 8.5 million year two, 7.6 million year three, 6.3 million year four. And then they stop. When you hit 33 years old and maybe along the aging curve, there's something that could go wrong, signing bonuses are done. Like that's how you do it. That's the kind of thing I want to see the Kraken do, where I'm sure Vegas has their internal models of kind of, okay, where do they see this player aging? Where
Mhm.
could this be a problem for us? And they load up the signing bonus to the extent that they can or feel comfortable with, and then they stop there and it's fine, but you leverage it to most that you can. I mean, when you find a quote unquote loophole in the salary cap, you got to press that advantage. And you know what, as Seattle, you're one of only 6 teams that can press this particular advantage.
Mhm.
You've got to do it. And it's something that they haven't been able to do. And unfortunately, it's a loophole that's
It's
kind of going to be
it's
closed for the
closing.
next CBA, right? It's closing after this year because the next CBA signing bonuses are limited to 60%, I believe, of the
Mhm.
deal. So you're going to be able to take advantage of this a lot less. So, I mean, maybe a lot of this is kind of a moot point because your time to take advantage of this was in the past. Like it's pretty much done now. You could still do it to an extent, but not nearly as much as you could. So, but I think it's just is a larger indicator of how poorly things were being run. And again, we'll see if this is different under Jason Bottrill. Like all of this is just speaking to Ron Francis and what happened during his tenure. Like there's not, I during the armchair GM stream, I think I got a couple comments like, so might as well just, relocate the team, whatever, you can fix this immediately. You can stop
Yes.
today. Like you
This
can
is a
get better at
choice.
this right now. This is a choice. And and to be fair, Bottrell hasn't had a whole lot of opportunity to to change this or change the data on this quite yet. And so he could totally do better at this. Like this is not something where we can even start to judge what he's done yet. So I want to make sure, we're being clear that we have an open mind here, but it's just another issue with just like the player development stuff where you can get better. And this is an area
Mhm.
to improve and it's something to watch out for, as Kraken fans to see if they get better there.
Right. No, it is definitely something that can be changed. It can be changed right away. Again, I don't think this is in Mariners situation where, like, ownership just is like, we just have a fixed amount that we're going to spend and that's going to be it. Like, I just genuinely don't think that's the case because you've proven to be a cap team with no results. like like how many ownership groups realistically would be willing to do that? Not many. But they're an ownership group willing to do that. And so I can't imagine that it's really necessarily them holding this up. I mean, obviously, maybe they would be a reason to not go to the extremes that Florida does, but not to be utilizing it at all. It doesn't seem like something that ownership would be stopping here. That feels like something that was a choice made by Ron Francis, and maybe Rick Olchek, who's negotiating the deals. I don't know. I don't. Here's the other part that's weird to me, though, RJ. Why aren't agents asking for this? Like, if you're an agent for a player and you know you're negotiating with a team at a no state income tax, why are you not like, hey, can we get the Florida special? Right? Like, that's more money in my client's pockets. Maybe
And I
more
do,
money in your
yeah,
pocket too, depending. Like,
right.
why wouldn't
That's
you
true.
like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, why are they not so I have to assume at some point someone's agent has approached the Kraken and been like, "Well, why don't we structure the deal like this?" Because also, like, what player doesn't want to just get a big, like, $9 million check in the mail on July 1st, right? Like, that's pretty huge. Probably direct deposit, but still. You wanna see that. You want that bank notification. Like, I have to assume at some point, at least one agent has approached the Kraken with this as a possibility, and seemingly then the Kraken would have said, "Nah, it's fine, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
We're just
very
gonna
good
go for the
point, actually.
traditional overpay, thank you, it's fine."
Yes, just sign up for the traditional overpay. Well, okay, sure, I guess so. But yeah, I mean, I think that is actually a good point, right? Because the agent should be asking for this as well. And so somewhere along the line, I think the answer has probably been no.
Yeah, that or a lot of people are dropping the ball, right? Like, it's not just like Ron Francis. There's a lot of people dropping the ball that this hasn't happened. But like, I do think that it does say something that you are dead last in the league, right? Like, there's the overpay issue. That's one thing. You're right. Your valuation for players. There's a variety of reasons that maybe lead you to be there. But I think that with this particular issue, not taking advantage of being in a state with no income tax, not taking advantage of this signing bonus loophole, that very much definitively feels like either, again, gross negligence or realistically a choice. And I just don't understand when you're in a hyper competitive landscape, when you've paid billions of dollars, all said and done, through all of your efforts here as an ownership group, why this would be the thing that you'd be like, no, I don't want to do that, right? Or when you're a general manager and you're fortunate enough to be one of 32 individuals on the face of this planet capable of making these decisions, and you just be like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, somewhere in there is a decision being made that is just a terrible decision, and I just don't understand the logic behind it at all.
Yeah, I'm
But it's
with
a
you
decision.
completely.
Like, people made
Yes.
this decision to be that against it for some reason. And we have to accept that somewhere someone actually did do that.
Yeah. And it's tough with our job because like we'll never probably know the details of where along the line and chain of command the decision was made. All we get to look at is
You're
the
not
end
gonna ask
result and
Ron?
see. Oh my god. Well, no, seriously. The next opportunity I get, I will. I mean, because look, it's not Bottrell's fault, but he's the
No.
GM now, so I
He's the
I
one who
will
has to
ask him
talk
about.
to us contractually.
Yes, exactly. Yes, but no, I swear the next chance I get, I'm
Yeah.
going to ask Jason Bottrell about the no state tax thing and just why the Kraken haven't utilized it in terms of signing bonuses to the extent that these other teams have. And who knows? I mean, look, Bottrell, he's been very open and straightforward
Yes.
with us. Like I've been very impressed with that,
Yep.
certainly compared to Ron Francis. Like, who knows? He might give me something more to think about that I haven't even considered. So next chance we get to talk to him, I will certainly ask about it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good call. And yeah, be really intriguing to hear what the answer would be for something like that. Definitely. But yeah, I mean, anything else from this article that you want to mention? I mean, again, it's a rough look for the Kraken. There's no two ways around it. But again, there are things that can be immediately fixed. Like it's one where I know we're kind of laughing about it, but it's also like something that I don't think you have to, if you're listening to this, take totally pessimistically and act like this is just a forever problem, because it's really not. At any point, as we were saying, these were choices. Someone along the way was choosing to do things this way. That means they can choose not to do things that way, and it can get fixed, as RJ said. And then you're in just a totally different landscape.
Exactly. And I think that really the ultimate takeaway of this article for me, aside from, which is what we talked about, was how much of a reason there is for optimism long term with the Kraken. Because, I mean, that's what was so jarring about them being last place in the league, is that based on the situation, the advantages that they have as a no state tax team, you want to dig a little further, a team with like brand new facilities. I think a generally attractive place to live and play. And especially as the word continues to get around, like it's not as rainy and gloomy as everyone says it is, stuff like that, where players are going to talk. And really, like the Kraken's natural place on this list should be, I think, in the top third, given their
Mhm.
advantages as a team, and especially with the no state income tax thing. So that's where they should be. It's jarring to see that they're not there and so far from that, but they absolutely have the potential to get there. And I feel like they don't even need to do a whole lot special to get there. So I think that gives you reason for optimism, that we could easily look at this over the next 5 years. And if things are changed and done correctly, the Kraken should be in the top third.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that that's something that should be like a goal for the organization. I know if I was in there in any sort of position to make it so, I would make it so. Again, Bottrell has done nothing. I know, you mentioned the Ryan Lindgren contract. It is an overpay. We talked about this when it happened. It is an overpay, but there's lots of ways to get out of it. He is going to be a good culture guy. And the landscape of free agency this year was, I mean, free agents are always probably overpaid. You were especially having to overpay this year because there was like 5 guys available.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing. You can afford a slight overpay on something that's like situational, right? We talked about the Lindgren
Right.
thing, like, right? If you're moving Alexiak out, he's actually a cheaper replacement, and it's a movable deal and all that sort of thing. That's fine because each contract is made for its own reason, right? You can get away with one here and there when you have a good reason for it. It's just when it adds up to the where you're worst in the league, it becomes a problem. But like with the Lindgren deal, like that's why I'm not giving him too hard a time on that,
Yeah.
is because it just in the context, we already talked about why we don't hate it as much as most people. And then also, if you were going to load it up with signing bonuses, the longer you do that, especially for a player with so much tread on his tires,
Yeah.
you are limiting options as far as like buying it out or whatever you might need to do. So that makes sense.
Yeah. It's all the other decisions. It's the Grubauer signing, it's the Berkey signing. It's yeah, there's so many. It's the Chandler Stevenson signing, right?
I was
And
waiting for
all
that
of
one.
that. I know. Well, because he
Do
has
we
a
need
lot
to
of
say it
defenders.
again?
I
Yeah.
don't need it to make it super controversial again, but again, it's a bottom 4 player in the league according to almost every analytic out there. Uh so not that I want to make it controversial again or anything. But yeah, it's those things, all of them added together, that create a bad situation to deal with, right? Like you can afford 1 or 2 overpays in free agency to supplement your core group of players that you have locked up to good deals and all of that kind of stuff. That's what good teams do. This isn't that, right? Like Brad Marchand going back to Florida, it's probably an overpay, right? Like that contract's probably an overpay. Florida doesn't care, right? Like you don't care when you're in that situation. And so hopefully we see, next year the Kraken are going to have a massive amount of flexibility. So many contracts are coming off the books. They're going to have a ton of money, ton of cap space. They're going to have the ability to really go out there and remake this roster, and it seems like remake it around guys like Matty Beniers, Shane Wright, Berkeley Catton, Jake O'Brien, Riker Evans, Blake Fiddler, all of these great prospects that they have. And it'll be an opportunity for Jason Bottrell to hopefully do things differently.
Yep, exactly. And he's got a couple opportunities, should be soon, to do that as well with Capo Caco and Riker Evans.
Mhm.
Extensions should be on their way pretty soon. Maybe we'll get him in time to talk about him next week. But I mean, there is one where you could apply the signing bonus stuff right away.
Yeah, exactly. Like the 60% cap doesn't take effect until next off season.
Yep, you got time.
You could do it right now. Like
I think
now is the time.
just about everyone listening to this would love to see a fairly long-term extension for Capo Caco with some pretty heavy signing bonuses.
Yep. So let's make it happen. But yeah, no, good stuff. Want to remind everybody that next week is mailbag. If you have questions about this, any of the stuff that we talked about today, definitely make sure to leave those comments or reach out to us on social media, or email us with those questions. Really looking forward to doing that. I always love doing the mailbag episodes, RJ, particularly here in the off season, because we don't have like the post game lives and all of that kind of stuff where we're more regularly engaging directly with everybody, where we can answer these questions kind of, throughout at the year as they pop up. Being able to do these in the off season is always it's always a lot of fun, just because it feels like we're reconnecting to everybody.
Exactly. I miss the interactive stuff, and it's been great having the Patreon events with everybody, the Armchair GM stream, the prospect chat. It's been great having those, but like the mailbag, it's just far and wide questions about everything. Absolutely love to do it, and even get some of the random ones too, like our favorite players to watch outside of the Kraken. Where
Mhm.
we'll last time we just randomly mentioned Mason Marchment, so you never know.
You never know how things will go. Yeah, no, definitely. With that, also schedule release tomorrow. I know this is coming out super late tonight, so realistically, schedule's out if you're listening to this, most likely. And so we'll talk about that as well next week. What the schedule will be like for the Kraken next year. But real quick before we go, brace yourself, RJ, for this one. This is a hell of a transition to the sponsor read. If you want to get overpaid like somebody negotiating with Ron Francis, you need to reach out to Rico Tessador if you've been into an accident and you've been injured. It was right there. It was right there. I had to do it. I had
Yep.
to do it. I had to do it. And while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. So there you go. Just ask for the Seattle Kraken treatment. Get that
There you go.
a little bit extra when you reach out to Rico. All right, everybody. Looking forward to all your mailbag questions, and we'll see you all next time.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.